Alright, hey 7th and 8th graders. This video is going to go over some information about y equals mx plus b, otherwise known as slope-intercept form. Alright, so this year we have been writing, most of our equations have been written in this form, y equals mx plus b. So they've always started with y equals, and then they have something times x plus a number or subtracting a number. Whenever we have an equation written in this form, it's going to make a line, and when it's written in this form, it's called slope-intercept form. So here is how it got its name. So the first thing, the m up here, all right, in all of our equations that we've been working with so far this year, that has stood for the slope or the unit rate, or what it's changing by, okay? So that's where we get the name slope from. So the m, or whatever you're timesing the x by, that's the slope. Okay, the second part, the b back here, okay, that is the y-intercept. Okay, so it's always going to be 0, comma, whatever that number is. So that's where we get the name from. We have the slope and the y-intercept. So any equation that we see that looks like this, it's going to make a line. This always makes a line. And whatever the number right by the x is, that's the slope. And then the other number that you're adding or subtracting will be the y-intercept. All right, so I have two equations here, and they are both actually written in slope-intercept form, and they both will make lines. So the first thing I notice is that they both say y equals, and then they both have an x and a normal number. It has an x and a normal number. So these are written in slope-intercept form. You can see here that the 2, that's going to give me my slope, and the 3 here, that's going to be my y-intercept. Again, that just kind of matches up right here. There's my slope, there's my y-intercept. Now, the second one that we have looks a little bit different, and that's okay. It says y equals, which is good, and then it has 3 plus 5x. Now, you might notice that it's in a little bit different order. Well, you can rearrange this as long as you don't change anything. So it's a positive 5x, so I can write that first, and then it's just a normal 3, so plus 3. So another way to write that would be y equals 5x plus 3. Now it's written in this y equals mx plus b form. So my slope is going to be 5, and my y-intercept is going to be 3. So even if it's written a little bit different, you can just rearrange this side. Can't change the symbols. It still has to stay, if it's positive, make sure they stay positive. You can just flip-flop them, and then it's easier for you to see the slope and the y-intercept. And again, when we graph these will both make lines. All right, so here I have an equation, y equals 3 minus 1/2 x. When I first take a look at it, I notice that it's almost written in slope-intercept form. Remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So it's always we want it written in the same order. So when I look at it right away, I see that the x is in the back, the normal number's in the front. So I want to try to kind of reverse those or flip-flop them. So I'm going to start with my y equals. All right, and I am going to look at my x. It looks like it's negative 1/2 x, so I'm going to list that first, negative 1/2 x. Okay, don't forget that this was actually a negative, so I got to keep that sign. And then when I look at the 3, it's just a normal 3, so I'll write plus 3. So I just rewrote that in slope-intercept form. Now the reason I did that is because it'll help me to graph this equation. All right, so now that I have it rewritten, I can graph it. So I'm going to label my x and y axis. All right, and I'm going to start with my y-intercept. My y-intercept I see is 3, so I'm going to come up to 3 on the y-axis, put a point, and then I'm going to take a look at my slope. Okay, well, my slope says it's negative 1/2. Remember, the slope is always with the x. And when we do slope, remember, it's the rise over the run. Okay, so if I kind of look at that, my slope is negative 1/2. So that means I'm going to go down 1, that's my rise, and then to the right 2. So from this point, I'm going to go down 1. So I go down 1, and then I'm going to go over 1, 2, and then put my point. Okay, so same thing, I'm going to do that again. I'm going to go down 1 and over 2, put my next point. I'll do that again, down 1, over 2. You can keep going. I'm also going to go backwards, and if I want to get the points up here, I'll go up 1, backwards 2, and I'll put my point. All right, so now I'm going to graph it. I'm going to draw a line through it, put arrows on the end, extend it. I'm going to label my special points. I actually see 2 special points. I see my y-intercept, which is 0, 3, and I also see my x-intercept over here, which looks like it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0. All right, to make it a complete graph, I'm also going to write the equation. So I have y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3. All right, now I made it a complete graph, and it did make a line. All right, so all of these equations that we've been working with and that we've been rewriting so that they say y equals, those are all called linear equations. We write them in the form y equals mx plus b. Okay, so all of them look like that. We might have to rewrite it sometimes, but we can get it to look like that. Those are linear equations, which means they make a line. So that means when I graph it, no matter, what the equation looks like, as long as it's in that form, it will make a straight line. So the ones that we did today in the video and that we've done previously, they all make lines. So for an example, y equals 4x plus 3. If I graph that, that'll make a line. I know that because it starts with y equals. It just has like a 4 and an x plus 3. It will make a line. If I had this, y equals negative 2/3 x plus or minus 7. Again, this will make a line because it has my coefficient with the x, so a number times x, and then it has plus or minus a normal number. So those all make lines. Now an example of one that would not make a line would look like this. Would not be linear or nonlinear, would be y equals x squared plus 4. Okay, if I graph that one, we know whenever we see an x squared, that's not going to make a line. That's actually going to make a U-shaped curve called a parabola. So that would make a U. So that is not linear. So this would be an example of a not linear equation or a nonlinear equation. Okay, if I gave you a couple examples, let's see if you can tell which is which. Y equals 8x minus 2 and y equals 3x squared plus 4. All right, the first one, this one would be linear, okay? It says y equals, it's got my normal number times x and then just plus or minus something. So this one is linear. The second one that I wrote is non-linear because of this x squared. It's not going to make a straight line. Okay, now if I gave you one that might look a little tricky but still is correct, let's say I wrote y equals 5 plus 2/3 x. Okay, this would still be linear. Okay, it'll still make a line because you can write it in y equals mx plus b form. All I would need to do is flip-flop these. I would say y equals 2/3 x plus 5. And notice how they were both positive, so I kept their signs the same. So this, again, would make a line. All right, we're going to take a look at one last problem. So here I have an equation, y equals negative 4 plus 3x minus 2. Now you might look at that and think, ooh, what is this going to make? So if you look at this, first thing I would do is always just kind of look, is there anything you can simplify? Okay, if I look on this side of the equal sign over here, I see a negative 4 and a negative 2. I should put those together. So I'm going to rewrite it as y equals negative 4 and negative 2. That gives me negative 6. And then I just have my plus 3x. Okay, now when I look at this, I think, oh, I think this is going to make a line, but it's not quite written in slope-intercept form. To write it in slope-intercept form, remember, we want the x first. So it looks like it's a positive 3x, so I'm going to just flip-flop it. I'm going to write y equals 3x, and then it says plus negative 6 or minus 6. So there is my correct equation. It still says y equals, it's just got the x first. And it says 3x minus 6. Now I can easily see my slope is 3. So your slope is 3, or 3 over 1, and your y-intercept is 0, negative 6, or negative 6. All right, if you have any questions, please see your teacher about slope-intercept form.